Welcome back. We've got the Q2 2025 Archer earnings, and I'm joined by no other than Archer's biggest bull. We have Dylan and my partner in crime. We were missing him for the Joby earnings. It was all over the chat, but we've got him back. It's Liam, my fellow hustle brother. How you doing, brother?
Not too bad. I went missing for a while. Guys, you know what? My camera and my audio quality is going to be shocking tonight. I'm currently in the UK. I'm about 10 minutes down the road from Reece. Loving life. Met up, person to person the last few days. No, life's doing good. It's nice to be back streaming again. Dylan, how are we getting on, my guy?
I'm doing good. I'm smiling because it's an Archer earnings day. I have no idea what's in store for it. I have some hopeful thoughts and maybe some hopeful words that will get brought up in the call, but overall, life is good. So yeah, let's get into it. Let's see how you're doing. How you doing, Reece? You doing good?
I'm doing very well. I'm actually I'm very interested in this earnings. We've obviously had Joby's last, was it Thursday now?
Yeah.
And I felt like it was quite a convincing earnings. It really did sell me. And I'm just hoping that Adam, as always, has got something in store for us. I think there's quite a lot of items that we probably need a bit of explanation on. We also want to know where are they with that part certification. I think one of the things that we were really raving about with Joby was the fact they just done a nice, easy diagram of this is percentage of each stage of the part certification they've done. And it's something we were actually saying that we all wanted and all needed. I would like to see Archer give us a similar idea. But I think just for once, we were actually before the closing bell. So I think maybe we should have a quick look at what it's looking like for Archer ahead of this earnings call. So over the day, it's obviously fluctuated quite a bit. I think over the past week, it's not been great reading. Dylan, what's been your thoughts over the past week to month, where we're down 9.9% on the month? But when you start bringing it back over the year, we're up 162%. So it's not all bad reading. And sometimes you have to take that step back and sort of realize where we've come from in the year. But obviously, we're getting held up to Joby at the moment. And what they say is comparison is the thief of joy. So how are you feeling at the moment with Archer? Then,
you know, obviously I can go back and forth a little bit on it, Reece. As a selfish person that I try not to be, obviously I'd love for Archer to be in the 15s and to the $20 on the share price right now. But if I actually look at it from market cap, I don't have the exact open right now because I'm looking on more of a graph, but I would say that Archer's market cap is probably about 7.2, probably about 6.8 to 7.2 billion right now, just as a guess. And for me, I know you can't liquidate MOUs, but we do have with Archer $6 billion of back orders, and you have $2 billion in cash that we know of with Archer right now. So for me, I think Archer is about as fairly priced as it can be for an emerging growth stock. So I feel like that Archer really hasn't ran away too fast, as well as we've really had, and I think it almost go to the 3-month chart on this. You know, outside of the pop to the about the 1350s or so, it's generally been about consolidation, I would say. So it's been one of those times for me where, you know, you obviously can't. For me, I can't hold every stock, every equity in the market. But for me right now, it's kind of the thought between buying into Archer's strength, as well as knowing that there is a heavy short on Archer. So, you know, I don't want it to be something where I'm battling the market makers, as I'm never going to be the one that's going to be able to flip that switch on the shares that I'm personally buying. But it would be interesting to see if Archer can release enough news that would maybe have a significant drop of that short percentage come off, which again, we know will probably help us out on the price on the share count as well. But market cap wise, I think that they're sitting pretty nice. And yeah, just kind of in a curious stage right now. If the earnings call will have a boost to it. Yeah, how are you guys feeling?
Yeah, do you know what? I thought it was quite interesting. So I've actually got the chart up here. I don't have my free screens I normally do. But when I actually brought it back over the 6 months, we're still up 3.71%. Like, yes, we're taking a significant pullback, but we got to think in the middle of that, we have had the likes of Catalyst coming out. We've had the likes of piloted tests flying out. I really start to think now, what is the next big catalyst they can announce prior to actual certification? And that's the only thing that worries me about this whole phase at the moment. It's starting to shake off all them short-term investors where they're not willing to wait for their next catalyst. They can only see 2 to 3 months ahead. Anything further up than 2 to 3 months, they are not too worried about. I'm still bullish on Archer. I've been bullish on Archer from day one. Yes, we went through that stage where we were quite disappointed, but as always, we wear our hearts in our sleeve here. If I'm not feeling great on the day about Archer, I'll come here and I'll tell you about it. But at the moment, I'm feeling quite good. I do think Adam will have something up his sleeve today. But guys, before I get back to Reece, there is nearly 100 of you in the chat, right? Or in watching us right now. I need you guys to jump across to the chat and let us know, do you think Archer is going to beat or miss on earnings? And the reason why, we're going to run 2 giveaways today. The only way to take part in this giveaway is to make sure you're subscribed, make sure you've hit the like button, and that you've commented in the chat. Look, it's not down to us who we pick. It's automatically, it's random. But yeah, jump into the chat and do let us know. Reece, what are you actually feeling about? Look, Joby are pushing ahead when it comes to the commercialization side of it. We're getting a lot of news around the defense, and I know it's the exciting topic at the moment with this whole Golden Dome ramping up, and it feels like every business is talking about defense.
Yeah.
Do you think it would be great, I don't know, of great focus to watch, to more or less double down and get the defensive side of the business up, firing on all cylinders, and then bring in the commercialization with you?
I don't know about you guys, but I would be quite disappointed if they didn't do the commercial air taxis, because that was that's sort of what I got on board for. I was like, that's kind of the idea I had for this company. And now if they just kind of completely sacked that to the side and were like, oh, we're just doing defense, I would be a bit disappointed, if I'm being 100% honest. But I can see maybe from a business perspective, if they are further behind with this type certification and they're kind of seeing it as the race has sort of been won, so why don't we sort of pivot and then just go fully focused on defense? Because I think that's something we brought up many a time of, is their fingers in too many pies? Can they concentrate on on what they're doing? Because they obviously have business proposals from all around the world, and you kind of wonder, have they bitten off too much? But in terms of your question, I'd be very disappointed if they've basically stopped this air taxi service and their commercialization. I'd be very disappointed on it. But I can also see from a business point of view that it might be the best thing for the business. And at the end of the day, I just want the business to make the most money. But from a personal view, I've kind of just got that in my, a sour taste.
Yeah, I don't think they'd stop the commercialization business altogether. What I believe may be beneficial towards them is to put more funding into the likes of the defensive side, get them defensive contracts, get your business up and running, still push forward with your air taxi service. But I would market it more as, look, this is Archer Defense. This is what we're about to do. Because at the moment, Adam's trying to sort of separate the 2 businesses out, Archer Aviation and Archer Defense. And yes, I can kind of see why you're segregating out. And I really agreed with that at the very start. Like, I know people are going to think I'm flip-flopping here. But then at the same time, is it too early for it to branch out? Do you just want that Archer name out there? And I don't know. I'm just so addicted to defensive contracts. I think they bring so much capital behind you.
I guess the other part of it is the military budget then can be used for the like research and development and sort of getting it to a stage where it's like flyable. Because obviously we discussed about these 2 rotors. Is that going to work? Does it have to go to 4 rotors? If that is a problem now and they're starting to like think, oh, well, we might have to go back and redesign everything, is it better to pivot and then use the military budget in order to basically get it over the line whilst they're still working on obviously how they're going to be doing it to the public for the and the commercialization of the air taxi side of it? I think that could be the answer maybe. But
yeah, guys, do let us know in the comments what you think. Would you like them to focus more on the defensive side, or would you like them to double down on commercialization? Then Dylan, what are your feelings? Are you happy with what they're doing? Would you prefer them to go heavier into defense, or would you like them to focus on what their initial goal was at the start, which is air taxis?
Yeah, I think I do lean similarly to Reece, where it would be a little disappointing if Archer was not into the commercial air taxi business, as this kind of was the pipe dream of me being the Archer investor, that one day I would be on the Midnight and I would have a plan to go from point A to point B and be able to use that air taxi network service, call the thing up, basically, again, either hail your ride to the vertiport, or we'll be able to figure out the way that they're going to layer these vertiports across the cities as they begin to scale. And then when I switch over to thinking about Archer Defense, one piece that I do like from Archer is I feel like they've been a bit forward thinking inside of Archer Defense too. So just to name some, and we can go into more of these like on our Sunday shows and stuff like that, but just some of the trademarks that Archer has gone ahead and applied for or have become active. They went ahead and actually trademarked or applied for the trademark with Archer Defense on July 16th of this year. They did apply and put in for the trademark for Archer Intelligence on June 13th of this year. And as well as they've also trademarked a few other names such as Mothra and Monarch, which are to be used more in the military applications. So that would basically be your names of possibly the Andro vehicles, Andro aircrafts that would be coming over on that side as well. And I wanted to have them up in time to show. So again, maybe we can bring them up on a Sunday show, but there's actually been some designs as well that have been showing off what the potential change to the aircrafts would look like going under the different trademark names. So you might have, again, that Midnight and a few other of the aircraft names, depending on what the use cases are for. And so again, for me, Archer Defense has been spoken about, I would say, for at least 2 quarters now. So I think when it was initially announced around Q4 of last year, it was a bit of a surprise. And I think, again, I go with you guys in having to battle that, are they wearing too many hats? Because I think at the end of the day, whether you want DOD or if you want commercial, one of the things that we're still in the challenge of is ramping up manufacturing. And to that, again, the FAA cert, I definitely think is going to be, it's obviously important for us to get to commercialization within the US. But just in my gut, I still have this feeling that Adam is going to be primed and ready for FAA cert, but he's also seen that there has been some roadblocks, and that's been a big brick wall for the eVTOLs to be able to get through in the past. And for him and for his company to succeed, to go ahead and explore the defense side and create Archer Defense. And again, I guess I just have to bring it up really quick and I'll pass it off. So it's not as a shot to Joby at all, but it is interesting how when Archer 2 quarters ago had taken on Archer Defense, and they actually have a full defense council of retired Army, retired Air Force, and USAC as well on the board of directors under Archer Defense. All right, so it would be the Archer Defense Advisory Board, actually, is what it's officially called. So it seems like that they have been building this up for minimally half a year, with, again, possibly the integration of a Palantir boot camp coming even prior to that. So yeah, I guess to the main question, if I'm looking at this as a sustainable company and how we're going to get to 2028, I think
Right,
that
numbers
the
are out.
government.
I don't want to be
Numbers
late
are-
on this one. Sorry.
No, that is more important than me. Let's pull them. I did see it took a dip. I got a notification initially that it was dipping. Does look like we climbed back up. It had dipped into the 8s, and I almost jumped off of here and was like, not financial advice, but I was like, I need to jump off the stream and get a few shares. But it seems like we're climbing up. But go for it, Reece. What you got?
Yep, let me share my screen. And just in case anyone missed it, the pilot has landed. We've got Mark with us. How are we doing, Mark?
Mark.
Hey, everyone. Sorry I'm a little late.
That's
You're all good.
always glad to have you.
Right, I'm going to quickly jump to the comments while you're getting that up, my guy. It's not looking good for this guy. And then Joby is a much better investment. John Smith, please come back to me on that. George says, short the hustle, brothers. Thank you, my guy. Justin Perry, yeah, I'm on board. Vasey and C, he's back. Go for it, Reece.
Perfect. So here we go. This is what everyone's been waiting for. This will get us prepped and ready for the earnings call that will follow at 10 o'clock. So here we go. Here's the highlights. So aircraft manufacturing ramps with production certificate well underway. We are concurrently producing 6 Midnight aircrafts, 3 of which are in final assembly across our facilities. We are building these across our Golden manufacturing line in Silicon Valley and our high volume facility in Georgia. In parallel, the FAA continued conducting reviews and inspections of our manufacturing operations as part of our production certificate efforts. Then they go on straight away to mention about the LA 2028 Olympics and White House Executive Order Advanced U.S. launch plans. The LA 2028 Olympic Games selected Archer as its official air taxi provider, helping align our federal and local stakeholders around achieving our goal of FAA type certification and scaled operations of the Midnight. To enable this, we partnered with the U.S. Department of Transportation and the FAA and the White House on an executive order in June 2025 to promote American dominance in the eVTOL aircraft and create a presidential mandate for early U.S. deployment as soon as next year. They then move on to talk about the UAE Launch Edition takes flight. We signed a definitive agreement with our partners, Abu Dhabi Aviation and Abu Dhabi Investment Office, to activate our first of several planned Launch Edition programs globally. As part of this, we delivered our first Midnight aircraft to the UAE, commenced our flight test program in Abu Dhabi, and expect initial commercial payments later this year. That's a good sign. Accelerated defense program with 2 strategic acquisitions. This is what we were discussing just before. Archer Defense is seeing strong demand from 4 of the major allied defense programs worldwide. In an effort to accelerate our path to market, during the quarter, we made 2 strategic acquisitions, a patent portfolio and a critical talent from Overair, and a specialized defense composite manufacturing asset from Mission Critical Composites in Southern California. Just jumping up here to what they mentioned then in their financial position, sector leading cash position surpassing 1.7 billion. Our Q2 2025 $850 million capital raise further strengthened our balance sheet, supporting our simultaneous execution across both our commercial and defense opportunities. And then last but not least, the quarterly spend within the range. Our Q2 2025 spending landed within our guided range and included strategic investments to support the company's growth trajectory.
Nice.
I think I hate to be the one to do it, but in terms of the news that's came out, comparing it with Joby, how are we feeling so far before we move on to the next? This is probably more aimed towards Mark and Dylan, as we went over this just over the other day.
You want to go first, Mark? I'll take it.
You're muted, my guy.
Jump on in.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Loud and clear.
All right. Sorry, guys. I'm setting up this new camera, so I want to be a little bit more professional. Dylan, you go ahead because I.
Okay. Yeah. Sure thing. Yeah, no worries, Mike. Take your time. So, in scrolling through the shareholder letter as well, if I'm just visually comparing it to what I was seeing as general highlights coming off of the Joby shareholder letter, I think something that jumped out was the aircraft that was being in basically final design to go over to manufacturing. So we have right here Archer speaking that they are concurrently producing the 6 Midnight aircraft, which we've talked previously, where you can have the TIA testing done on multiple aircraft. So that, Joby's doing 5, Archer's doing 6 right now. And they are saying they are in the final assembly across our facilities. So again, if we're taking the word, it's one of those things that's interesting where you kind of think with Archer, as much PR as they do, that there's really nothing new that they can come out and show you in a shareholder letter. Excuse me. I do encourage anybody who has a chance after the stream to actually go ahead and pop over to the shareholder letter, as it's actually going to give you some pictures as well, where they have something I'd like to maybe hear a little bit more about this on the call, when they have the picture here that's saying ramping manufacturing capabilities, Covington, Georgia. So they're showing basically 2 airframes sitting one in front of the other. And so if I'm to take it at word, those are coming in from or being assembled in the Covington, Georgia factory, which is something been very interesting for me to hear of, again, maybe hearing some key buzzwords like CapEx, hearing what's being spent and how much either they plan to spend in additional CapEx as opposed to just kind of the adjusted EBITDA margins. And also you get to see the ramping of the manufacturing capabilities in the engine and battery lines in Silicon Valley, which can take you through a lot of those test areas. And again, I think, the tranche, you get a lot of DoD talk in here. And then also, if I could just say one more quick thing as I scroll up, one thing I did like when we were talking about, okay, so when we go to the UAE Launch Edition takes flight, we did see that there was a midnight delivery that was doing anybody can fill in the word for me here, the non-piloted flights. So I know that was kind of maybe cause for concern as Joby was over in Dubai doing piloted test flights at the time. So for me, it's a positive sign because I actually had on my notes here from the past quarters that Archer's guidance said that they were going to have a midnight delivered to the UAE by midsummer 2025. And for me, outside of the PR that I'll look at and listen to, it's really to match it up to the guidance from the previous quarter from Adam and the team. And that's what I look to either see as a matching highlight or something that's missing from the last quarter's call. So I was really curious, and we'll see if it gets brought up on the call, of where that aircraft is, meaning maybe if we get a timeline on the pilot, because Archer and their PR, I would assume that if this midnight was being piloted in the UAE, we would see film of that. So It's very interesting to see, to hear what they're going to say with this delivery of the aircraft over to UAE, and then to put into the shareholder letter that they commenced our flight test program in Abu Dhabi and expect initial commercial payments later this year. So I'm going to say commercial payments. I'm thinking maybe that would, just my random guess, would be from UAE doing the actual purchase of the aircraft, and then UAE being able to adopt those into the market survey flights. So those are just some initials, and not to forget, we do have the new CFO. She's been an interim CFO on, I would say, minimally the last call. I think she did step in on Q4, but Priya Gupta will be the CFO. She is now the CFO for Archer Aviation, so she'll be giving us all the financials numbers today as well.
I think one of the things that I'm most interested from this call will be to learn about where are we in terms of number 1, design, number 2, manufacturing, and number 3, how close are we going to be to that TIA testing? Obviously, we found that Joby are going to be entering now. Just from like this initial part here, I'll read this out, but I was just glancing over it there, and it's kind of like what I mentioned before, and it's kind of the writing on the wall maybe before, but once again, very vague, and maybe later on in this report, I might be proven wrong, and I hope I am. I will be crossing my fingers, but
Go for it.
we continue to focus on the near term of ramping our production capabilities to achieve 50 aircrafts per year across our 700,000 square feet of manufacturing and test facilities. As previously discussed, the Midnight aircraft we build during this new product introduction phase will be used in certification and early commercial deployments. We currently have 6 Midnight aircrafts in various stages of production, 3 of which are in final assembly at our Covington, Georgia, and Silicon Valley facilities. In parallel, the FAA continued conducting reviews and inspections of our manufacturing operations as part of our production certificate efforts. And then they say for Silicon Valley, California, the Golden Line, during this new product introduction phase, we are utilizing a golden manufacturing line approach at one of our Silicon Valley facilities for final assembly of our early Midnight builds. And in Covington, we are using the lessons from our final assembly activities at our golden manufacturing line in Silicon Valley to inform the design and ramp our high volume manufacturing operations in Georgia. In the early months of operations at this facility, we have been focused on manufacturing processes related to the Midnight's fuselage. I'm going to go down, see maybe that might be a bit more information. And no, it's gone. Yeah, I'm going to hope in the call, and I imagine definitely the questions at the end, somebody's going to be asking, where are we in terms of the part certification? And what stage are we in now? Are we going to be close to TIA testing? I don't know. What's your view on that, Mark? Because I know you've had a few.
So my big question is going to be, they have 6 aircraft in production. Which one of those 6 aircraft is your type conforming aircraft? Are any of them your type conforming aircraft? You would expect that they would be, because they are flying company conforming, or they're test aircraft right now. But yeah, which one is are any of them for TC purposes? So let's listen for that on the call. If they don't say that on the call, then that's a big concern. I expect they're going to say that on the call, or they should say that on the call. I'm surprised they didn't call it out in their letter right here. But we'll leave it up to them to talk. Those are going to be, at least on the commercial side and where they are at in their development program and in the just the entire certification process. Obviously, Joby came out and said, we have our, one of our aircraft is now in final assembly. So for TC, and that's going to be a fully conformed aircraft. That means that the engineering's done, and you are you're basically assembling what is going to be your production aircraft. So let's see what they come out and say on the call.
And then Liam, I guess one for you is this giving you sort of flashbacks to that last earnings call? Because I know afterwards we discussed that it was a little bit undefined, and that was maybe one of the only queries that we did have with Archer. And at
the moment, nothing's jumping out to me that we didn't already know previously. Like, I've jumped a little bit further ahead while you're explaining it there, and the biggest thing that's frustrated me is 2 quarters ago, it was all about defense. And this is why I spoke about Archer Defense prior to this being announced, because I wanted some big news around defense. All we've really got is that accelerated defense program with 2 strategic acquisitions. We have that over there, and we have the mission critical composites. It just feels like it's either really confidential what they are doing, or look,
selling hope.
Yeah, more or less. Leave it to Andrew. We've had to deal with Andrew, and then just away we go. Look, nothing's jumping out to me major at the moment. It looks like they're more or less doubling down and saying, yes, we are going fully commercial. I thought they may try and pivot away, knowing that Joby pushing that bit further ahead. But no, it seems to be that commercialization is the focus of the business, which, look, as an investor, I'd be happy, because that is why I invested in this company. But I'll let you carry on.
Fun. Yeah, I'll move back up then. We're here. So this was actually a good spot from Liam and the guys in the Discord chat, where it was about Archer being the sponsor for the LA Olympics. I guess the question for you, Mark, this would be, if they don't get into the TIA testing within the next, it'd have to be 2 years, wouldn't it?
Yeah, they still have
Very
plenty.
unlikely.
They still have plenty of time. Yeah.
So their comments here are, in 2023, the FAA published their innovative 28 plan, setting out the objective for piloted passenger-carrying eVTOL aircraft operations to reach meaningful scale by 2028. The Trump administration has continued to commit support and resources towards this goal. For example, earlier this month, President Trump commissioned a White House task force and appointed himself as chairman to lead federal coordination for the Olympic events, including security and transportation. And then to support the White House's ambitions, we have secured a number of agreements with local partners across the greater Los Angeles area to bring online takeoff and landing locations that we intend to use during the games to provide air taxi services. We've previously announced a number of those locations, including the SoFi Stadium and USC. So it's once again back to what Liam was saying. These are new. This is all news that has been brought up, and I guess that's something with Archer, is they will always keep you informed and make sure that you are aware of everything that's happening. I think that's maybe where you do get a bit more of a news flash when you do actually go on to the Joby's earnings call. Then it's about this White House executive order. Charts cleared a path for the US launch. President Trump signed the Unleashing American Drone Dominance executive order, declaring that the United States must accelerate the safe commercialization of the advanced aviation technologies. And this will also go along with that eVTOL integration pilot program. And then the next part is this Launch Edition takes flight in UAE, where they're doing a flight test program in partnership with the UAE General Civil Aviation Authority. Last month, we delivered our first Midnight aircraft to the UAE and commenced our flight test program in Abu Dhabi. And their launch partners recently signed with Abu Dhabi Aviation and Abu Dhabi Investment Office. Seems a little bit like repeating the highlights. Maybe a little bit more information would have been better. Operations training. Our airline operations team continue to work alongside Etihad Aviation Training to build our operational readiness across pilot training, maintenance, and security. And then this is what Liam was mentioning earlier. So there hasn't actually been too much news, and that is probably because of how confidential it's going to be working with defense. Hence why I would prefer it to be more of a commercial business, because I am a bit of a sucker for a bit of news around the stock. And yeah, what else would there be to talk about other than that? We would just be living in hope. I think, should we try and catch up with a few of the comments here? Because I think we might end up.
Yeah, while you load that, Reece, and just Liam, something for you. I think one thing that will be interesting to see is as we turn over either to year-end spend of, so for the Fed year, their money's going to go up until September 30th, and then you're going to reallocate, have the new budget, the FY26 budget, as of October 1. So it'll be interesting, I think, in these next few months here to see if there is any leftover allocation with the executive orders that can go into these eVTOLs, again, be it Archer or Joby. And then again, seeing if any tranche of money gets opened up coming October 1. So that'll be interesting.
I do think it's quite funny to see both of them have mentioned about this 13.4 billion budget allocation, because obviously they're both not going to get it like entirely, but they must be feeling that there is going to be a certain allocation just for eVTOLs alone. And you can see that that would be it would be very, very handy for them to get it now at this point, especially if they did want to pivot off into the defense side of things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Can you zoom in on that picture that you have up right now? Is there what the comments say or the caption says about that picture?
Yeah.
Is there a caption saying, is that the facility that they just bought into? The
Correct.
This one here.
Yeah.
No, it just says
Mm-hmm.
CUS Department of Defense budget. No, that's not referring to that.
Well, what's really interesting about that one, Mark, is when you go to when you search anything from Mission Critical Composites,
they show that.
try to go, well, everything is shut down. Like you can't even get to the website. It's almost like owner login. So that was a little bit different. So I did find, and I posted up about a 1 minute 55 clip. It was back from 2020 where Mission Critical Composites were kind of speaking over what they as a business do. So I think for any Archer investors, you might want to check out. I think I linked it to the Hustle Brothers YouTube. I'm sorry, to their X, or definitely check it on our X's to find that link into a little bit more about what MCC has been doing in their own pipeline.
Yeah. Yeah, and I saw that video you had posted earlier, Dylan, about it. I mean, they seem like they're a capable company. They bought the entire Archer bought all of Mission Critical?
Yes, sir. Yes, the 60,000 foot. Yeah, and that is all involved. Yeah.
So I mean, from what I saw, a lot of what they did was they do CNC work, and they also do a lot of carbon fiber pre-preg layup. I didn't see any AFPs, automated fiber placement machines. So I suspect this purchase will allow them to ramp their smaller composite component capabilities. You wouldn't do a full wing probably out of this facility unless they're going to use the facility to then leverage automated fiber placement machines and potentially purchase them and bring them into this facility. Sure. If that's the case, then they can, and most likely that would be wise on their part to purchase an already known supplier that says, listen, we're going to come in and we are going to buy you and then we're going to reinvest in you, because they obviously have the investment capabilities with the $1 billion plus that they have in cash. So they can then buy those automated fiber placement machines, bring them into that facility, and then their Covington, Georgia facility could be strictly just assembly. So you would make your component parts and then bring them all into the Covington, Georgia facility for large scale manufacturing and ramping up.
Then what I'm going to do, I'm going to jump back to the comments because I see there's a heap of people commenting at the moment. So Terry, yes, I'm bored. CNC, he's back. You were missed, but I'm glad you took a break. You can't ride that hard for too long. Thank you, my guy. Took a break. I'm in the UK at the moment. That's why my camera and my audio quality is shocking. I'm only down the road from Reece. We met up the last few days. And yeah, we'll be back recording soon.
That's cool.
Back of holding, the next big catalyst will be submitting the certification basis to the FAA. Do you agree with that, Mark?
What was the question again? I'm sorry. Someone else.
So I asked the chat, what is the next big catalyst after we have the piloted flights taking place?
Certification basis is the second phase. They should be well past that phase. If BAG has any indication that they're not past that phase, I'd love to hear it, but I suspect they're well past that phase.
And then HM says the path to profitability should be easier to obtain via a military route. Your friend Terry, when Liam laid out the ticket seat price, well, ticket seat profit for Archer, I fell in love with the air taxi goal 100%. Look, I only listed out what they said back in 2021. When you actually worked it out, look, I'm not going to give it away. Jump back to the video. Yeah, it could be seen as profitable. I wasn't actually as bullish as you, Terry, when I actually done the numbers. CNC defensive is the path to profits. It seems to be everyone wants the defensive side. HM, also the two recent acquisitions might be an ace in the sleeve for Q2. I'm hoping they do well. but I have a feeling it will just meet or slightly exceed expectations. Like looking at it after hours, I'm not sharing my screen, but we're down 1.47%. It's 9.40 at the moment, guys. Chris, my guy,
It's not horrible.
big up. Chris, I'll be back streaming with you as soon as I'm back in Ireland, I promise you, my guy. Then, Bagger Holden, what kind of military drone are going to make seek and destroy using AI or surveillance or transport? Guys, do you have any idea what the drone will be used for? It's reconnaissance missions, isn't it?
It's been very interesting to kind of also read into, and if anybody wants me to bore them with the trademarks of like Archer Intelligence, a lot also seem to do with the ATC network. So this is just a random aside, and one that we can obviously explore and get the thoughts on Sundays as well. Is, you know, curious if Archer is so engulfed into creating the air taxi network, is there any way that they may own, quote unquote, the ATC, and that anybody flying out of those routes would have to go through Archer Air or something like that? And I was also curious. I had a question for you, Mark. Just something that came up on the Joby call. So when Joe Ben had mentioned with the Blade acquisition that they might do tourist flights, and they may be able to skip over the 135 charter because it was a point-to-point destination flight. Is there any way, so minus an emergency landing, if you're having an air taxi route take you from a designated point A to point B with no alterations in that stop, does that still keep you in a 135 must need, or does that alter that at all?
It's more a function of the demand. It's not the route. So if it's a on-demand flight, so it's not necessarily scheduled. Okay. It's a 135 flight. So
that helps,
because again, the route is going to be a function of just someone can walk in and say, hey, I want to go up to, I want to flight from the Lower Manhattan up to Bridgeport, Connecticut, or not that anybody would want to go to Bridgeport, but they could offer that service within the 135. If they have defined flights that are scheduled at very specific times, and you buy a ticket for that flight prior to the flight happening, and you are scheduled for that flight, then you get into an air carrier. So those are the differences. His comment about tourism flights, if you're just going to go up and see the Grand Canyon, that I think still falls under a 135 charter. So I don't know exactly what the delineation would be there. But in any flight, if you have an emergency, you are allowed to do anything as a pilot or an operator of an aircraft. You are allowed to do anything that is going to allow you to safely get down on the ground and limit harm to your passengers, people on the ground, and then property. So you could go and land on top of a building, a Home Depot, if you had to. And if that is the best option that you had, then all is basically forgiven. It's not like we have to go land at our designated destination. No, if there's an emergency, you can do whatever you need to do to safely get on the ground. So you leave it up to the investigation after the fact.
That's helpful. Thank you, Mark.
And then HM says, if they use Midnight, it would be to transport, I guess. Who knows what is planned for his partners, though? Maybe we will find out. Bag says Seek and Destroy would have the coolest demos. I'm not getting involved in war talk. Petra says, yes, B. Archer's just trying to get revenue ASAP. Abhishek says -7% to fully recovered. Yeah, it did seem to take a massive drop off initially as it came out, but look, I wouldn't be too worried about that.
Yeah, it's after hours algos.
Yeah, and you know what I found interesting? I don't know, did we share it before? Remember when you said, Mark, that if Kathy Wood ever started buying into Joby, that's where I'd start getting worried for Archer, because I did see a comment down here that someone said Cathie Wood buys into Archer. And just because, look, I'm a big Cathie Wood bull, but just because Archer's invested in Archer and Cathie Wood's invested in Archer isn't the only reason why I'd invest in the company. She invests in UiPath and stuff like that, and that's had a terrible year. Its CEO left there about 12 months ago. So, like, do you know what? What are your feelings around Cathie Wood buying into Archer? I'd love to see, has she purchased much more recently? It might be a video I'll do when I get back.
The most recent over 5%er was Vanguard back on July 29th. They took a over 5% stake inside of Archer. Yeah. So that's been the most recent update on that. And I kind of wonder with Cathie, you know, it's like we all go through this investment journey, and I know I've had a bad investment that had to teach me a lesson, and something that was getting shorted out, and I didn't understand the market at that time. And, you know, I had to kind of go through those losses to kind of learn to try to be a better or the best investor I can be on any given day. But I wonder with Cathie, you know, I guess I go back to like Buffett, and I think years and years and years ago, you know, what was the traditional investor saying about Buffett when he was like, oh, I'm going to buy Coke, and I'm going to, you know, and then all of a sudden he kind of maybe saw what the 10, 20, 30, 40-year future may hold. So maybe a tough thing to judge ARC as it is such a forward-looking investment style off the general 3, 6, 1 year marks investments that she makes. And I think, again, through her Tesla, Archer, like you say, the UiPath, some of the AI plays that she invests in, it would be very interesting to see if in 5 to 10 years it does come to fruition and Cathie does become this kind of held in high standards of the one that was in early, you know, and really was able to take advantage of her forward thinking with inside of these sectors.
Oh, thank you so much for that. And I see Beauty Brains has came back and said that's not the only reason we buy Archer, that's only one of the reasons. No, honestly, I wasn't picking on you, trust me, my guy. It was only I was thinking it in my own head. We were discussing it with Mark previously, and then I seen that comment there, and that's what just got my mind going. Then we have Phil says, I think they fell so far behind on commercial, they're looking for a shortcut. Phil, great to see you, my guy. Jester Silva says, glad I don't currently have a position. Do you know what? Now's a time I'm actually starting to think on loading back up quite heavy again in Archer, because it's one of those, I'm not overly excited about the shareholder letter. If they have a good earnings call, this sort of 950 range is looking pretty tasty to me right now. Reece, how are you feeling? Are you loading on Archer now, given that most of the news is out here? Reece, you're muted at the moment.
Yeah, I noticed that. No, I'm thinking along the same lines as you. I think if it starts going back down towards the 7s and the like, it starts becoming a real buy. Like, I think this time, unlike in April, I think I go very heavy. I do think that they will get there. I do think that they will be behind Joby, possibly by up to 6 months. So they've been probably behind them by about 6 months or 2 quarters the entire last 2 years that we've been following them. And I don't know, at this moment in time, the price is getting to a nice stage, but I just need to be sold a little bit more on what they're doing with the design. Where are we with the type certification? I didn't like previously how wishy-washy the answers were when it came to the certification. It just felt very much like we're progressing. We've progressed further than last quarter, and we are doing our best. But that doesn't tell me anything, because like I'll assume in a quarter that you've improved and you've tried harder and you're trying to get it over. That's like not really the point of this earnings call. That's what
has me a little bit concerned is just been lack of news and media coming out of Archer in the last 4 to 5 weeks. We've not really heard a lot, and prior to that, there was a lot of cheerleading by Adam. So there's that, and then you compare to what Joe Bin on his conference call. I specifically remember him saying, I'm slamming my hand on the table here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, I'm doing a mic drop that we are going into TIA testing. He gave us defined dates, and that's the same thing I want from Adam. Just transparency. Exactly. If it's 6 months out, it's 6 months out. That's fine. Just say it. Or if it's a year out until they're going to be TIA ready, say it. If he's not saying it, then they're probably 6 months out or 9 months out. So, and if they want, I don't disagree that going the defense route is not a bad idea, especially because I think both Joby and Archer are going to get contracts. There is going to be plenty of money in the pool, and it could be very near term to where they could start getting contracts and getting revenue generating contracts. So even though right now this particular earnings call could look grim, it doesn't mean that they could come into this call and say, we suspect to be profitable by the end of the year. And that could potentially be with military contracts. And they could start to pivot to that, which really gives them an enormous pass. Both companies are in a very fortunate position right now because of the military space and how there's such a large focus and a draw of money going into that space. So I think that the future is bright for both companies still. But from a commercialization standpoint, I would like to see transparency of this is where we are at. We expect to be in TIA testing, or we expect to have company conformed aircraft by this point. You can't do a company conformed aircraft if you still don't have all of your engineering released. So if they are not through their engineering design process, then the FAA is not going to accept a company. They just won't accept it. The DERs have to sign off on all of the engineering first before you can go into company conforming builds. So they've got, let's hear what they have to say. It's going to be a good call.
And I'm curious about what you had mentioned there, Mark, too, on the DERs or the DARs, as those were brought up on the Joby call. And just reading through that shareholder letter, I'd have to go back to the exact sentence, so I'm just going to paraphrase. But it seemed like they were having FAA team members involved in this final assembly areas. So yeah, go for it.
Let me explain the process. In certification, a DER is a designated engineering representative. A DER signs off on the engineering that specifies the means of compliance for conformity. So, they talk about, all right, in stage 1 and 2, we have to develop our means of compliance. So how do we comply with the regs? Then I, as an engineer, will go and design something. And when that design gets released, which is a company process that the FAA accepts, then a DER files an 8100 form, and that 8100 form specifies this is how this part meets the means of compliance. So you have DERs that basically accept the engineering. DARs accept the airworthiness. So a DAR is more on the inspection side and on the assembly side in production. DERs are the step prior to that, and that is saying, yes, this engineering meets the means of compliance. So, but you cannot go into TIA testing until that entire design, from basically the very top level all the way, all of the parts all the way down, are all bought off and have basically 8100 forms against them. And that could be holding them up at this point if their engineering is just not complete yet. And that's a life cycle process. So if they don't have the people for it, or they've just not met all of their engineering designs yet, they're not to that point to go into TIA testing. And not only do you need to get the parts designed, then you go and get them fabbed, and then you go and you assemble the aircraft. So where they are in that process is yet to be determined. But to go back to it, I'm going a little long on this. Joby, from the very beginning, actually hired DERs, and they were company employees, and those DERs walked them through the design process to help them to say, yes, this will be acceptable. This design that you are doing is acceptable, or will be acceptable in the eyes of the FAA, because they were interpreting the regs all along, and they've had DERs going through their design iteration process since 2016, 2017. I mean, I know that specifically because I worked with a DER at a previous company, and this DER left and went and worked for Joby, and this was in 2017. Mm-hmm. And his designation was in propulsion. So obviously he went there and act as basically a consultant to say, yes, this is, I'm going to help you weather this certification storm or the certification process so that your designs will meet the FAA requirements and the means of compliance that you set out. So Jobin spoke to that when he said we have DARs that have been walking us through that process. He specifically said that because now in TIA testing, going through that final assembly, the DARs are the ones, the designated airworthiness representatives are the ones that are going down the assembly line. And when a part gets assembled, they say, yes, this now meets airworthiness. And that goes from the bottom all the way up to the top as well. It's an inspection criteria. And then when the aircraft finally is complete, it gets a full stamp of compliance. The FAA accepts it, and they go off to TIA testing.
I was just going to jump in there. Just a quick overview on the Q2 2025 finances. And to be fair, I think this is where you can sort of see how far we've come in this year. But the total operating expenses have jumped up. This time last year, they were $120 million per quarter. And now they're up to 176. It seems like the spending's going up. I imagine that's going up because of this research and development. Now they're producing the aircrafts. Obviously, this point last year, they were probably just designing and trying to get up to the stage of the type certification. The net loss for this quarter is quite large. I'm a little bit confused on why that's so significant.
What's the number, Reece?
206. I imagine that's 206 million.
Okay. Well, they didn't disclose any details on the Q1 on the financials of the acquisition, so it'll be interesting because if you look, they're saying that they have 1.7 billion in cash and cash equivalents. So curious where that extra 300 million went. Maybe that was something towards the acquisition. So we'll see if they speak about that too.
I do think that this is where you can see obviously the massive jump that we've had from this time last year, where the cash and cash equivalents were sitting at $360 million. And now we're up to obviously 1.7 billion. You're laughing now, really, at this stage, and I think it's going to be needed, every penny probably, to get us over the line, and if not more, from the Department of Defense. But let me carry on there. I'm just going to have to sit up quickly. So, Liam, do you mind just carrying on with some comments just whilst I get this up?
And while you bring those up, Liam, I was just thinking, and you think as Archer did the dilution, as they actually held the $2 billion cash, is you've had a lot, I won't say a lot, but you've had some CEOs recently kind of look to put that into Bitcoin, put that into Ethereum. It's kind of like this cash treasury. So it's been interesting. And for me, I've actually liked that Archer has decided to keep that cash on hand and not have that be kind of like a proxy play, just to have them kind of gain off of some other momentum plays within inside of the industry, as some other CEOs have been doing as well. Different sectors, but.
No, thank you so much for that, Dylan. And now we have New Blade. Big shout out to you, my guy. Haven't seen you in a while. Hi, all. Hi, Dylan and Terry. Great to have you back, my guy.
Hello, hello.
Brightstone, my portfolio value hit in 2,000 to 2,200. So far, biggest individual loss has been $60, and overall 100 to $200. But price that in gain, and my money's just in Tesla, Joby, Archer, and ha. Do you know what? Congratulations to you, my guy. Keep up the good work. Butte with Brains, what do you think about Archer on Jimmy Fallon's show? Look, I think there was a lot of people trying to pull down Adam with that. Look, it was good. It was good PR for them. Why are we still talking about it 2 months later? It shows it's worked. Stayed in your head.
Great point. Great point.
No, I think it was a good bit of PR. Maybe could have done a little bit more production throughout the actual quarter, but no, I'm happy enough with that.
100%.
Then, Scott Invest, what's up, fellas? Let's go. Good to have you here, Scott, my guy. Guys, do jump in, hit the like button. We've had nearly 1,000 people through the stream at the moment. Do hit the like button and do bang that subscribe button if you want to be in a chance to win a free giveaway. We're doing 2 of them tonight. We normally only do 1. We're doing 2 tonight. Viewer Brain says, well, selling an idea dream is much different than operating a company and having revenue, etc. Many says there was a 12% implied move. It's down 3% as of now. I don't see this as grim. I don't think you can really analyze until about an hour into tomorrow morning. I wouldn't worry too much right now. 10, 15 minutes till the call. I think the call will be coming up soon. Is that right, Reece?
Yeah, I'm just literally going onto it now.
Bagger Holden says, if you research and discover, it's not playing, is it?
No, it's going to be the music now for the next minute.
Perfect. Bagger Holden says, if you research and discover they never submitted the basis, would you think they are way behind where you thought they are? Basically nowhere yet. Bagger Holden, I don't really get your question. Archer, Fred Wayne, my guy.
Well, yeah, go for it, Liam.
Yeah, go on.
No, pop them up. Go for it.
Many says they have money to keep going. That's important. Cash growing. It's very positive. I was quite happy with the cash raise. I know short-term investors absolutely hate any sort of cash raise. 1.7 billion on the balance sheet. Look, we are going to need a runway. I think Mark says it all the time. There's only one way, or it doesn't matter how many ways you try to eat the Snickers bar, you're still eating the Snickers bar, or whatever you normally say, my guy.
Good afternoon.
Oh, wait, here we go.
Sorry, boys, I'm going to just mute you.
2025 financial results conference call. My name is Tamia, and I'll be the moderator for today's call. All lines will be muted during the presentation portion of the call with an opportunity for questions and answers at the end. If you would like to ask a question, please press star 1 on your telephone keypad. I'd now like to pass it over to Eric Lintel. Please go ahead.
Thanks for joining Archer's earnings call. This is Eric Lintel, Archer's Chief Legal and Strategy Officer. During the call, we will be making forward-looking statements. These statements are based on assumptions as of today, and we do not undertake any obligation to update them as a result of new information or future events. There are risks and uncertainties that may cause our actual results to differ materially from those contemplated by the statements. For more information about these risks and uncertainties, review the risk factors in our SEC filings. We will also be discussing both GAAP and non-GAAP financial measures on the call. A reconciliation of those financial measures is included in our shareholder letter and earnings release from today. And now I'll turn it over to Adam. Adam?
Thanks, Eric. We are living through the reindustrialization of America. Just 10 years ago, the best and brightest minds in the country were building SaaS products, marketplaces, and consumer electronics. Now think of what's going on today. We are building flying cars, modular reactors, and autonomous fighter jets. The new heroes of today aren't influencers, they're builders. People like Palmer Luckey, Alex Karp, and Zuck. If you're listening to this while trading on Robinhood or doom-scrolling Reddit, I would encourage you to put your phone down, pick up a tool belt, and come build a future world with us and others out there doing it. What a time to be alive. All right, let's dive in. This quarter, we made some tremendous strides in ramping our manufacturing, which we highlighted in our shareholder letter today. First, I want to step back to talk about how unprecedented the level of support is for our sector within the highest levels of the U.S. government. There has been a clear shift in our industry from ambition to execution, focused on scaling commercial air taxi operations in the U.S. and select forward-leaning cities around the world. First, there were multiple presidential executive orders directing an imperative for U.S. leadership in advanced aviation. Second, showcasing air taxis at the 2028 LA Olympics was made a national priority. And third, there was a series of unprecedented changes to FAA rules that will help unlock near-term commercial ops in the U.S. Just a few weeks ago, I was in D.C. meeting with Vice President J.D. Vance, FAA and DOT leadership, and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. I left more convinced than ever. This is the most coordinated national effort in modern aviation history. My message to them was simple. Archer is committed to furthering America's lead in advanced aviation by building and deploying eVTOLs here at home and then exporting that innovation globally. The Olympics mandate has become a national stage to showcase air taxis at scale. 2 years ago, the FAA published its Innovate 28 roadmap for scaling eVTOL ops in American cities by 2028. Earlier this quarter, the LA 28 Olympics announced that they selected Archer to be the official exclusive air taxi provider for the Games. And just last week, a new executive order established a White House task force personally led by President Trump and the Vice President to ensure maximum safety, secure borders, and world-class transportation at the 2028 LA Olympics. This level of commitment is allowing us to rally our infrastructure partners, supply chain, and the FAA around a national priority. Our existing infrastructure partners, including SoFi Stadium and USC, as well as new real estate groups, are working with us to prepare over a dozen eVTOL vertiports to support Archer operations. Our key suppliers are ramping production and component level certification to align with our manufacturing scaling timelines. And the FAA is working closely with our teams to advance Midnight certification to support our operational readiness. The executive order in June, crafted in partnership with the White House, DOT, and FAA, is the most significant federal action to date in the eVTOL sector. It establishes a national directive for American dominance in this industry and a presidential imperative to begin air taxi deployments in the U.S. as early as next year. These early operations will allow us to validate Midnight's performance, safety, and scalability in real-world conditions in advance of the Games. But to make all of this a reality, we must quickly ramp manufacturing to support our certification programs and early commercial deployments. Tom will unpack the details, but here's the headline. We now have 6 more Midnight aircraft in various stages of production, with 3 of those in final assembly across our facilities. When those are complete, that will bring our Midnight fleet to a total of 8 aircraft. Each of those will carry our production four-bladed rear propeller design and will either go directly into certification flight testing or early commercial deployment. Completion of these aircraft will bring our fleet to 8 Midnight aircraft. The capital we have deployed over the last few years to build out our test and manufacturing is now paying dividends. We are the only ones in the eVTOL sector capable of executing what we are doing today, using a golden line approach as a blueprint to scale our high volume facility. If you remember, we began construction on our high volume facility in Covington in early 2023. Our team built that in 2 years at a record pace, and no other company in the eVTOL sector has even started construction on a comparable facility. We are pacing the industry. And location matters too. The FAA's Atlanta Aircraft Certification Office manages our certification program, and our Covington site is located in a suburb on the eastern side of Atlanta. The proximity enables frequent on-site engagement as we work through our certification program. Further, we began working on our production certificate in January, and the FAA is conducting regular reviews and inspections with our team as we go through these early builds. The goal here is to ensure we are aligning the progression of our type certification with our production certificate so that we can ramp manufacturing as soon as we receive Midnight's type certification. This quarter, we also commenced the piloted flight phase of our flight test campaign. By design, we deliberately started with conventional takeoff and landing flights, as Midnight is uniquely capable of handling both vertical and conventional takeoff and landing as part of normal operations. In recent years, our flight test campaigns have predominantly focused on VTOL and transition to wing-borne flight. As we eye TIA later this year, it was essential to first work through the CTOL campaign. The good news is that we are rapidly progressing through the flight envelope, hardening the aircraft's ability to handle our expected commercial operations. For example, we've recently focused on flights in the 20 to 30 mile range, which are representative of many of our planned commercial operations. We also expanded our flight test program internationally with our first launch edition operations in the UAE, where we first focused on testing Midnight's performance in Abu Dhabi's extreme summer heat. This is important to validate Midnight's safety and reliability in high heat, high humidity conditions essential for regulatory approval and subsequent commercial operations across the region. We plan to deploy several of these early aircraft commercially under our Launch Edition program with strategic partners ahead of FAA type certification. We've announced 3 Launch Edition program partners so far, with the first being in the UAE, the second being in Ethiopia, and most recently, Indonesia. Demand from global operators and governments continue to grow. This summer, we signed definitive agreements with Abu Dhabi Aviation and the Abu Dhabi Investment Office and kicked off operations under our first Launch Edition program in the UAE. This unlocks a multi-year commercial partnership that I expect will generate tens of millions of dollars for Archer, with initial payments expected later this year. Let's run through some of the key activities from this launch program. Delivering our first Midnight aircraft and began flight testing with the GCAA in June. Deploying our first flight simulator with Etihad, which our teams will be using to build local readiness across pilot training. Converting existing aviation infrastructure into turnkey eVTOL vertiports in partnership with local stakeholders, including JetX, the UAE's leading FBO operator. Over the next several years, expect to see us continue to ready infrastructure, deliver additional Midnight aircraft to the region, and begin early exhibition flights with passengers ahead of more robust commercial operations under authorization from the GCAA. We also expanded Launch Edition into Asia, beginning with Indonesia, anchored by Jakarta, one of the world's fastest growing megacities, and Bali, a high demand destination with limited access options. You can expect to see us both announce more global Launch Edition partners and continue to grow our multi-billion-dollar order book with the world's top governments and airlines. As we partner with the countries at the highest level of government, our growing commercial momentum is also attracting defense momentum. For over a century, every major conflict has been defined by a breakthrough in military technology. World War II introduced the fighter jet. The Gulf War showcased precision-guided munitions and stealth. Drones reshaped the war on terror. Today, the war in Ukraine is being fought in real time with unmanned systems and satellite-linked targeting. The next paradigm shift will be defined by advanced vertical lift. The U.S. and its allies, however, are still reliant on legacy platforms such as the Chinook and Black Hawk, expensive older technology from the 60s and 70s. But future conflicts will be won with low cost, low thermal, low acoustic systems capable of rapidly moving through contested airspace without risking human pilots. Over the last 18 months, I've learned from the global defense industry that our customers demand a purpose-built system designed to stay relevant for decades. You cannot simply slap a heavy fuel powertrain onto an existing eVTOL design. I am confident that Archer's technology positions us at the forefront of that shift, delivering the speed, agility, and deployability modern militaries will require to win. To accelerate our progress, we completed 2 strategic acquisitions this quarter. First, we acquired a key patent portfolio and technical team from Overair, a Carum aircraft spinoff focused on advanced fixed-wing and rotary wing platforms powered by high-efficiency tilt rotors. Second, we bought a supplier of specialized defense composite manufacturing capabilities in-house by acquiring a 60,000 square foot facility in Southern California from Mission Critical Composites. These moves continue to build our proprietary moat as we push to meet the demands of our growing defense pipeline. Following recent meetings in Washington with Secretary Hegseth and Secretary of the Army Dan Driscoll, it's clear that Archer Defense is positioned to become a strategic pillar of our business. With over $1.7 billion in liquidity, we're not waiting on the future of aviation. We're building it now at global scale. This is what execution looks like. Over to Tom.
Thanks, Adam. The progress at Archer continues at an unprecedented pace. It's incredibly motivating to work with what I believe to be the best team in the world to turn the vision of advanced air mobility into an everyday reality across both commercial and defense. This past quarter, Benjamin Lyon also further integrated into his role as president, aircraft OEM, bringing decades of leadership experience from Apple and more recently as CTO at Aptiv. Partnering with Benjamin and the additional team members he has brought in has already meaningfully accelerated our progress across engineering, manufacturing, and certification. Since 2018, we've been relentlessly focused on finding the most efficient path to making urban air mobility a reality. We have worked tirelessly on the engineering front to ensure Archer leads the way in this new sector. We've outpaced the competition through a series of deliberate choices, from our design to our manufacturing build-out to our approach to certification and flight testing. Watching our chief test pilot, Jeff Greenwood, take Midnight to the skies this quarter marked a defining moment for our flight test program, as he stood on the shoulders of all that we've achieved over the last 7 years. This piloted phase of our program, like everything else we do, intentionally builds on years of safe, autonomous flight testing across our various aircraft platforms, which validated our proprietary 12-tilt-6 VTOL configuration. Here's how we got here and why I believe we're leading the industry with our pace of progress. I joined Archer in 2019 after spending nearly a decade working on this technology. With a small team of elite engineers, we went from a clean sheet to the first flight of our full-scale 12-tilt-6 eVTOL aircraft, Maker, in 2021. In 2022, less than a year later, we completed the full months-long transition test campaign on Maker, making Archer one of the first eVTOL companies to achieve that milestone. In parallel, we matured our production aircraft platform, Midnight, and it took flight in late 2023. Just 7 months later, in June 2024, Midnight became the largest eVTOL by gross weight to complete transition, an unmatched technical achievement. I have highlighted this point before and continue to do so because what I've learned from building more eVTOL aircraft across more programs than anyone else in the world over the last 15 years is that an aircraft of at least 6,000 pounds will be critical to being able to carry economically viable passenger payloads. Then, by fall 2024, we had already surpassed 400 test flights for the year, months ahead of schedule. Those flights demonstrated Midnight's ability to do high-rate operations and advanced landing profiles, validated acoustic performance, and demonstrated robustness to critical failures, all while optimizing Midnight's control laws. This pace set us up to achieve the two critical milestones Adam highlighted for our flight test program this quarter: flying Midnight with multiple pilots and commencing our first launch edition program by beginning international flights in Abu Dhabi. Let's dive deeper into both of those. Our inaugural piloted flight was flown by Jeff Greenwood, who has been at the helm of some of the industry's most pivotal flight test programs. When he landed after his first flight piloting Midnight, which hit speeds of 125 miles per hour and altitude of over 1,500 feet, I'll never forget his first comment. Midnight flew just like the simulator. And that's exactly what you want to hear for any test flight. This level of consistency isn't a coincidence. It's the product of our team's engineering and operational excellence, with unmatched attention to detail and dedication to safety. While we designed Midnight to fly predominantly vertical takeoff and landing operations, it's important that the initial phase of our piloted flight test program with Midnight focus on conventional takeoff and landing operations for two reasons. First, throughout Midnight's design and certification process, regulators, airlines, and defense customers have stressed that they need us to certify both VTOL and CTOL operations for operational flexibility and enhanced safety, as well as extended range for certain missions. Second, it's the most pragmatic, safe approach to flight testing. Our strategy has been to first validate Midnight's fixed wing flight and conventional landing performance, and then return to focus on VTOL with pilots on board. In the back half of the year, we'll continue to ramp up the pace of piloted flight testing, rapidly expanding our performance envelope and commencing piloted VTOL operations. In parallel, we plan to continue our international flight testing, which we kicked off in Abu Dhabi earlier this quarter as part of our launch edition programs. In early July, we flew Midnight at the Al Bateen Executive Airport, located in the heart of Abu Dhabi, with our local customer and partners under oversight from the national regulator, the GCAA. Our initial vertical takeoff and landing testing was focused on UAE-specific performance conditions, including high temperature, humidity, and dust exposure, as we work to ramp commercial operations in the country. Just to give you a sense of how critical and difficult the operating environment is there, just a few minutes on the tarmac, internal components within Midnight's avionics bay for one flight heated to just over 140 degrees Fahrenheit immediately before takeoff. We are building Midnight to operate safely at these temperatures, and it was rewarding to test our performance across these more challenging conditions. Over the coming quarters in the UAE, you can expect that we will expand on our in-country operations, including pilot training, MRO setup, and flight testing, all in support of gathering additional data to inform our certification and commercialization plans in both the UAE and the US. As Adam mentioned, we announced today that we are currently producing 6 Midnight aircraft, 3 of which are in final assembly across our facilities. Each of those aircraft will feature our production 4-blade rear propeller and will go directly into vertical takeoff and landing flight testing. We are building these across our facilities in both Silicon Valley and Georgia. We continue to be focused on developing the capabilities required to achieve a rate of 50 aircraft per year across our nearly 750,000 square feet of manufacturing and test facilities. During this new product introduction phase of our Midnight program, we are starting with our Golden manufacturing line at one of our Silicon Valley facilities. This pilot line is where our engineering and manufacturing teams work together to refine the build process and equipment to ensure we can build the aircraft efficiently with high quality. We then leverage this playbook developed in California, along with all of the lessons learned in the ramp of our high volume manufacturing operations in Georgia. In the early months of our operations at Georgia, we have focused on dialing in the manufacturing processes related to Midnight's fuselage, as this is the core part of the aircraft where the majority of the aircraft systems are installed. All of this flight testing and manufacturing progress is enabling the continued rapid advancement of our Midnight certification programs with the FAA in the US and the GCAA in the UAE. On the FAA certification front, as we've discussed on our most recent calls, we are primarily focused on the 4th and final phase of Midnight's certification program, with the FAA having now approved about 15% of our compliance verification documents. The executive order that Adam mentioned, along with our quickly advancing piloted flight test campaign, have meaningfully accelerated our progress with the FAA. Over the past few months, we have successfully completed several SOI 3 audits, including one for our in-house developed powertrain software and hardware. These SOI 3 audits cover software testing and verification and are the penultimate step before the final certification review at SOI 4. On the airframe certification side, we have now completed all of the composite material coupon testing for certifying Midnight's primary structure. This data from over 2,000 individual tests is in hand, and certification test reports are now being finalized to provide to the FAA. This past quarter, we have also taken several steps aligning with the FAA on TIA entrance criteria and execution plans as we approach this next key phase of Midnight certification. As has been our plan all along, we have agreed with the FAA to have multiple TIAs on the program, each targeting a specific system or set of systems in order to efficiently move through the work as certification test data for each area is matured in parallel. We believe our rigorous and collaborative approach with the FAA is setting the standard for the industry. In the UAE, we delivered Midnight to Abu Dhabi and commenced flight testing in the region, advancing our relationship with the GCAA. Over the coming months, we will continue our flight test campaign in the country as we work closely with the regulators to receive authorization for commercial flights ahead of FAA certification. Finally, let's discuss our progress on the defense side of the house. We are rapidly maturing the design of our new hybrid electric aircraft. While I can't share details on the mission parameters or aircraft requirements due to the sensitive nature of the development, what I can share is that we are focused on building a revolutionary aircraft, not simply a hybridized version of an eVTOL. That's why we made 2 strategic acquisitions in this space over the last few months. Just a few days ago, we highlighted 2 of those, Overair and Mission Critical Composites. We acquired Overair's patent portfolio and hired critical employees from Overair, a spin-off of Karam Aircraft, founded by Abe Karam, who invented the Predator drone and is regarded as the founding father of drone technology, with decades of experience with DARPA and the DoD. We believe this technology will accelerate our path to market with our defense aircraft and can also be utilized in future commercial variants of Midnight. We also acquired key manufacturing assets and a roughly 60,000 square foot defense specialized composite manufacturing facility from Mission Critical Composites in Southern California. These assets bring core composite fabrication capabilities in-house, supporting our defense program needs for rapid prototyping and iteration. Momentum is strong on the defense platform. We're excited about the path ahead, and we'll continue to share more details in the back half of this year. And now we'll turn it over to Priya to talk about the financials for the quarter.
Thanks, Adam and Tom, for the strategic insights. I'm pleased to share our record financial results for the quarter. As Adam mentioned earlier, Q2 is a pivotal quarter for Archer. We have strong momentum across all our planned lines of business, across civil and defense and domestic and international. We're capitalizing on significant tailwinds, all while maintaining our unwavering focus on operational execution and market entry. We closed Q2 25 with $1.7 billion in cash and cash equivalents, marking our 4th consecutive quarter of record liquidity, and means we have almost twice as much cash on hand as our next competitor in the sector. This was all made possible thanks to our successful capital raise strategy that we've executed on over the last 2 years, including the completion of our $850 million financing in June. Our ability to raise capital in the manner we have to ensure we maintain a strong balance sheet demonstrates the institutional confidence in our strategy and our ability to execute. Despite the strength of our balance sheet, we continue to maintain our disciplined approach to capital allocation, strategically investing in the initiatives that matter most. Our financial results for Q2 25 were in line with guidance, and represent the investments made across key priorities we have highlighted over our last few calls. Rapidly advancing our piloted Midnight Air Taxi through early commercial deployment and certification in the US and UAE, ramping our aircraft manufacturing capabilities, accelerating the development of our defense aircraft, and maturing our AI software platform approach. Our net loss for Q2 25 was $206 million, and our net loss per share was 36 cents. This included approximately $92 million of non-cash charges associated with stock-based compensation and warrant revaluation. Excluding these non-cash charges, our adjusted net loss for Q2 25 was $114 million, and our adjusted net loss per share was approximately 20 cents. Our adjusted EBITDA for Q2 was a loss of $119 million, falling within our guided range of $100 to $120 million. This represents an approximately $10 million increase from the previous quarter, reflecting planned investments, primarily in people-related costs to support our key priorities. Our GAAP operating expenses for Q2 25 were $176 million. It included approximately $52 million of non-cash stock-based compensation-related expenses, which reflects the costs associated with stock issued to our employees, non-employees, and vendors. GAAP operating expenses increased $32 million quarter over quarter, primarily due to the increase in people-related costs mentioned earlier, which reflects our accelerated progress in manufacturing, certification, and other initiatives such as defense. With regards to cash burn, our cash used in operating and investing activities for Q2 25 was $127 million. For Q2, our cash used in investing activities was $24 million, and in line with the guidance I provided in the last call. It represents an increase of $14 million over the previous quarter, reflecting strategic areas of investment in the quarter, such as the acquisition of the MCC composites manufacturing-related assets, the over-air patent portfolio for the defense program, and aircraft material-related purchases. As I touched on earlier, but I do think it bears repeating, even with these investments, our quarter-end cash position was at record levels, with an increase of $694 million compared to Q1 25, and more than quadrupled year over year. Notably, this marks our fourth consecutive quarter of simultaneously growing our cash reserves while executing on strategic business objectives. Looking ahead, our priorities for the quarter will continue into the second half of 2025. You can also expect that we will continue to invest in the bring-up of our operational footprint in UAE to execute on our launch edition and certification plans there. And we expect our UAE launch edition to start generating cash inflows later this year. We will also continue to invest in ramping our manufacturing capacity and supply chain capabilities across both Archer and key vendor facilities, all in support of our plan to ramp commercial air taxi operations for LA28. As a result, for the upcoming quarter, we estimate our adjusted EBITDA loss to be between $110 and $130 million. We estimate CapEx in Q3 25 and expand investments in tooling and in equipment. Archer continues to be laser-focused on executing on the most efficient path to market with a diversified business model across commercial air taxis, defense, and software. We believe our investments to date in top-tier talent, leading technology, manufacturing and supply chain capabilities, and strategic partnerships are helping us establish a competitive moat that will deliver long-term shareholder value. With that, I'll turn it back over to Adam for Q&A.
Thanks, Priya. We're going to take our first question from the retail. and that is, when will we see mass production? Yeah, so really when we think about mass production, craft, how to actually put them together, and then second, where to deploy them. So one big change that happened for us over the last quarter was codifying this new goal for us to be at scale at the Olympics. And that's what we're building towards today. So as we touched on in the call, there's really two phases of manufacturing that we think about. The first is building on our golden line in California. That's where our engineering and manufacturing teams work together to refine the processes that we use to build the airplane, refine our overall production system, reduce labor hours, in all these learnings that we can then apply in Georgia at scale. And that's what we're in the process of doing right now. So as you can see in our shareholder letter, we're deploying those in Georgia. And all of this is because the Olympics have given us that really great single date to drive everything towards, to be at scale. Thanks, Tom. And with that, operator, if you can open the line up for questions.
Absolutely. We'll now begin the live Q&A. If you would like to ask a question, please press star followed by 1 on your telephone keypad. If for any reason at all you would like to remove that question, please press star followed by 2. Again, to ask a question, please press star 1. In the interest of time, please limit yourself to 1 question and rejoin the queue should you have any follow-ups. The first question comes from Andre Shepard with Cantor Fitzgerald. You may proceed.
Hey guys, Andre here. Since I guess I only have time for 1 question, maybe I'll make it a 2-part question, if I may. Adam, curious if you can just remind us your vision for commercialization in the UAE. How do you see that unfolding, and what are the steps required between now and then? And maybe quickly for Tom, did I hear correctly? So I'm just trying to understand, like the aircraft in production currently, those will be used to test different components with the FAA for TIA credits. Just want to confirm that. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Andres. We kicked off the first of several launch edition programs earlier, revenue generating agreements with both Abu Dhabi Aviation and Audio. And that sets us up for low tens of millions of dollars in payments over the next 18 to 24 months, with a portion of that starting this year. And under the launch agreements, the launch editions, we've delivered our first Midnight to UAE in June, and you can expect us to ramp up a small fleet in Abu Dhabi going forward. This year, we'll continue flight testing in hot weather. We'll train pilots with Etihad, and we'll prepare infrastructure. And if you remember, on the infrastructure side, our strategy isn't to construct and certify new vertiports. We don't think that's pragmatic in a place like the UAE that has hundreds of helipads, more than 70 of which are in Abu Dhabi. First, regulatory framework to certify existing helipads for eVTOL use. And then we're also working with a number of groups for access to their landing facilities. We announced several of them already. So Abu Dhabi Cruise Terminal, Falcon Aviation, who is the exclusive operator at the Corniche and Palm Jumeirah in Dubai, and Abu Dhabi airports. And I'll let Tom answer the second part of that question.
Yep. Hey, Andres. Be used for both FAA flight testing and some of the launch edition goals that Adam was just touching on. And so really the strategy is the same as it's been for quite a while, where each specific aircraft has a specific test plan. And we're working to make sure that the that are required to be conformed to support that particular test are all kind of sequenced in with our overall plans. And I think I highlighted earlier, we've had really good progress aligning with FAA on TIA plans. And so a lot of those, those really come into fruition, which is super exciting.
Thank you. The next question comes from Mackenzie Holloran with Needham. You may proceed.
Just one from me. So in order to reach the early deployments of the Midnight aircraft with the DOT and FAA as soon as next year, could you just provide any color related to on-the-ground preparations needed to get the aircraft into commercial service? So specifically, where do things stand today on infrastructure readiness, aircraft production, and any other key milestones in order to achieve that? Thank you.
Hey, Mackenzie, this is Adam. So we have a fairly comprehensive infrastructure strategy that's in place. So we announced 3 vertiport networks that encompass many locations across New York, LA, San Francisco. Strategy focused on real estate really across 4 main buckets. First bucket was across the major international airports that we operate with our partners United and Southwest. And so you can think about places like Newark and LAX and SFO. The second one was around agreements with FBOs and portfolios around the big market leaders, Signature and Atlantic. So those are locations like Santa Monica and JFK. The third bucket was around municipal partnerships to install industry in Manhattan, as an example, which are publicly accessible. To be clear, no one has exclusive access to any of those. And the fourth bucket were proprietary deals where our data science team surgically identified key vertiport locations, and we formed partnerships with top-tier operators, places like SoFi Stadium or there. And then from there, it's really getting the aircrafts in position to start operations.
Thank you. The following question.
Hey, thank you for taking our questions. First, on UAE, I'm wondering if you can give us a rough roadmap on what to expect, for the next, call it 12 to 18 months. I know you have launch edition ramping up, but just in terms of the flight testing, I think you also mentioned it's going to get more advanced. So you share a rough path on what to look for in the next kind of year, 18 months.
Yep. Hey, Edison, this is Tom. So as we announced, we did our first flight out in the UAE earlier this summer, which was super cool. Main goal of that was to learn about operating in the really high temperature environment out there. Talked about that a little bit on the call. What you can expect to see later this year is more flying in the UAE. Back half of the year, our efforts progressing both our FAA certification and UAE certification. So just like in the US with the GCAA, we've got really detailed plans put in place that we're executing against to gather all the requisite data from ground tests and flight tests to support the commercial operations there, ramping up over the next 12-month period you mentioned. But maybe Adam wants to chime in more about what that'll look like from the commercial side. Sure. So we will grow the fleet from now through the first half of next year. We will get the commercial authority from the GCAA to begin flying. We will start exhibition flights and those that I mentioned, and then ultimately have the full commercial flights take place. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a roadmap.
Thank you. The next question comes from Amit Dayal with H.C. Wainwright. You may proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Good to see all the progress. Congratulations. So the balance sheet looks really solid, guys. How much of this is going to go towards the defense opportunity? And, with respect to that, are there any catalysts on that front that, we should be looking out for?
Yeah, thanks for the question. First, defense, there's one kind of large engineering team here at Archer. The good news is, as the Midnight program matures, a lot of the engineers can work over on the defense part of the business too. So you can think about, parts of the aircraft program on the Midnight aircraft, like the Aero team, for example, that is more mature, can start working on the defense side. That their left team is still working on things like performance up and cost down. And as they start to roll off, they'll pick up steam on the defense side as well. As far as the defense side goes, I think you can see it in looking at the U.S. defense budgets, and there's a couple of pretty interesting Pentagon requested $13.4 billion aircraft. So as you know, in my previous calls, I can't say much about it, but I think that there's 2 points that are quite interesting. One is we see this as a global opportunity, not just an opportunity in the US. This is something that makes sense all over the world, and so that makes this opportunity quite large. And the second is, our goal is really a program of record for the past, 18 months in, our communications with the different defense departments is that you cannot simply hybridize a passenger eVTOL. You have to build a new bespoke aircraft. And so we've been working on this for a while. I think we have a clear advantage over our peers here, and we think it represents a very exciting opportunity.
Thank you. The following comes from Savi Syth with Raymond James. You may proceed.
Hey, good afternoon. Just so based on Tom's comments, I'm guessing you're not out of policy completely, so you don't have your kind of compliance and cert plans approved. So under this scenario, could you talk about what can be accomplished on the certification side? And then just to follow up on the two-blade versus the four-blade, I was just wondering how much of a major design change that is, or what that has an impact on the flying of the next few aircraft versus what you've done so far.
Sure. So Adam, I'll take the first part of that. So I think it's important to even just establish what you even mean to be in with the FAA on policy things like certification basis, your means of compliance, your certification plans. And so both Archer and Joby are the only two that have published airworthiness criteria. So this means that we're really the only two in the final stages of policy. And so while we are largely done, it's not completely done. And so no OEM can fully conform an aircraft. So 18 months ago, we announced that we were building 6 conforming aircraft to be used in the FAA certification process. And we said that each aircraft would be used for TIA testing, each one with different systems. And we expected to be out of policy with the FAA in a short period of time. But given the industry issue papers and other policy matters that we were dealing with, that affected everyone, not just Archer, that aircraft, and we expect to use those aircraft for TIA testing. And in fact, the aircraft we're flying today will be used for TIA testing likely this year. But since policy for the industry isn't done, we cannot fully conform the aircraft and finish TIA testing. In fact, that's why we introduced the concept of the launch edition, which is where we sell the aircraft in advance of the FAA type certification process. And we'll do that to countries that want to start early. It allows us to generate revenue early. There's a list of countries that are very excited to do this. And it also sort of shows the importance of why the Olympics and the executive order have been highlighted so much by Archer, because it helps bookend this whole process with the FAA, where the highest levels of government have said, this is very important to the US. It's very important for specific events to make sure that the policy.
Savi, and then I guess on the second part of your question, as you know, we've been flying conventional takeoff and landing on midnight with a pilot for the last few months here. And that was really intentional. It's been the plan for a long time. Kind of to put that in context and get to your question about the aft props, we flew midnight hundreds of times over the last couple years without a pilot on board, and so we got that flight regime. So it was really intentional to try and gather data focused on conventional takeoff and landing. One thing we did is we had multiple pilots fly our airplane at this point, so we're getting feedback on landing, from multiple of our test pilots. But just to be clear, every plane that we're manufacturing now is going to have that new aft 4-blade propeller, and all of those will likely focus on VTOL flying. That's not to say that CTOL flying is not important, both for all the reasons I've mentioned, and because we're going to need to do TIA. All this stuff is stuff we need to do. But then just the last point is there still is a lot we can progress right now, given where we are with policy. And really the main area that we're waiting to close has to do with flight test and essentially, flight test policy for the entire industry. And Adam kind of mentioned, nobody can enter TIA if you're talking about up, in the near future, and good path to finish all the testing we need to get done.
Thank you. The next question comes from Austin Moeller with Canaccord. You may proceed.
Good afternoon. Just my first question. So was the goal of the mission critical composites acquisition, does that enable you to vertically integrate more carbon composites for the structures? And would that enable you to manufacture composites for the passenger aircraft as well as the unmanned aircraft, and therefore rely less on third-party aerospace suppliers?
The opportunity is quite large, and we identified the need to have rapid in-house development capabilities around advanced composites. And so this was a really great way to stand up that capability. There are things we think we will learn on the defense application that will be able to ultimately transfer over to the civil application. And so you see this as, this is quite common in the, kind of broader commercial aviation industry, where defense a lot of times will lead to it. Just doing civil, it doesn't necessarily make sense for us to be doing, experimental things that might not be applicable for civil. So the defense side gives us that might not be applicable for civil. So the defense side gives us that R&D capability, allows us to scale ultimately on the commercial side.
Thank you. The following comes from Bill Peterson with JP Morgan. You may proceed.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon. Thanks for all the details. I wanted to come back to a prior question on flight testing. And I guess with the it comes from the TIA and also locking in the propellers, when should we expect up and landing versus conventional? What needs to be completed ahead of this for this to be de-risked? And I guess, when subsequently should we expect testing Midnight with the FAA pilots on board?
Yeah. Well, as I just mentioned, answering Savi's pilot on board. So we've got a lot of data that's given us confidence in the behavior of the aircraft in that flight regime. And so, that was one of the main reasons we wanted to focus on conventional takeoff and landing. So having said that, we're planning to wrap up a lot of that CTOL test campaign and get back to VTOL flying with pilots on board later this year. But we're going to take it step by step. Another thing I mentioned is we're building aircraft right now that will have those new aft four-blade propellers. And, we've got some of those propellers in hand. So all that is sort of moving forward at pace. And so all of that positions us to, support TIA testing over the, hopefully starting end of the year and then into next year. But last context there is we really have made tremendous progress with the FAA, aligning plans for all things, really targeting to go achieve specific flight test objectives. I think that's the key here to get through this efficiently.
Thank you. As a quick reminder, if you'd like to send David Zazula with Barclays, you may proceed.
Hey, afternoon. Thanks for taking my question. You might have answered it earlier, but is the 15% number you mentioned during prepared remarks, is that apples to apples with the 15% figure you mentioned during 1Q? Because we have been kind of anticipating that many of the roadblocks, there's a flight test issue that is preventing more progress. Just more color on that, Tom, or just reference your prior answer if applicable. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. So to put that number into context, this is the FAA accepting compliance verification documents for the aircraft. So this is like it's been witnessed if it needs to be witnessed. Here you go, FAA sign off. And so to answer your question, yes, we are about the same sort of percentage through that we discussed on the last call. But no, like we don't see that as any issue. Like this is not something that we would expect to continuously ramp up in like a nice smooth curve. It'll kind of come in the various systems. And so one thing that we talked about on previous calls, and we talked about earlier on this call, is there are still these handful of policy items open. And so in the last call, we talked about emergency landing, and specifically this industry paper around 2105G. But we're still waiting for it to be finalized at stage 4. And this is like kind of really in the weeds of FAA certification, but we know what the requirements are. We're in good shape against those. We're just waiting for the administrative process to roll through such that we can then start conforming items, making compliance findings, sending in those reports so that we can get that 15% number to tick up. So kind of in the weeds, but hopefully that gives you some context.
Thank you. The next comes from Josh Sullivan with Benchmark. You may proceed.
Hey, good evening. Adam, maybe a higher level question. Just how do we think about the defense opportunity at this point, as you see it? You just noted that it's quite large. Executive orders, and now 2 defense acquisitions here. I mean, do you think we could see Archer with anything like 50-50 between commercial and defense, or how do you see defense technology settling into the portfolio maybe longer term?
I'll give you a higher level answer than just specifically defense. So, when we started designing the aircraft, the type certification process, and as it's taken time, we announced the Launch Edition program. And that gave us a way to commercialize early the civil application. And so that was, I think, a creative way to find countries that wanted and start operationalizing the industry very early. And so we've been focused on that. The second part has been obviously focusing on the type certification with the FAA here in the U.S., which ultimately gives you, the ability to go, global. And so that's also been a big application side, is not as much focused on certification process, but more focused on a program of record. That stuff is very chunky. And so there's not a lot I can give to disclose on, where that's at. I do also think it's obvious by looking at the conflicts today that there's a very real need for autonomous and attritable solutions, not just in, future vertical lift, but, really across many different applications. And so I do think it will continue to be something we focus on. I think it has the opportunity to be very large, and very large in the early parts of the, Archer revenue generating process. But we'll have to wait and see how that all shakes out before we say too much.
Thank you. There are currently no further questions queued, so I will now pass it back to Adam.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. We're building the future of aviation now. We're not waiting for it. And each quarter, we're proving what's possible in this new era for our industry. I look forward to sharing our progress with you next quarter. Thanks.
This concludes today's conference call. Thank you for your participation.
I do apologize, everyone there. I don't know what was happening. There was a bit of technical difficulties, I believe. Not really sure what was going on there with the volume.
It sounded good.
Yeah,
It was coming.
I did jump out.
Fine on my end.
Yeah, no, I jumped out. Then I went on a few different streams that seemed to be the same across the whole thing. So I think it may have.
I think it started at the Q&A actually with the first gentleman's phone. So yeah, so sorry about that. But I think it might have actually been on the Q&A on the gentleman's phone. Chat.
I've got quite a bit I've written down here actually. I might as well just gonna get straight into the meat of it actually. So for some reason they started off with they've done their first flight in the UAE, and they've done it over there because they have to deal with the hot temperatures, which doesn't really have any relevance. But and then the next plan then is more flights in the UAE. Then they mentioned about this parallel effect we're going to have with the UAE and the FAA type certifications. Then we just moved on to that we're going to grow the fleet, and it sort of just brings me back to my problem all along of we seem to like we've got a plan to deal with it, but what is the plan? That's the problem. That's what I want to know. I wanted to know what the plan was. I understand you've got a plan. That's great, and I love the fact you have a plan. But the whole point of the question was like, what is the plan? Because I'd like to know, and then I can make my decisions based on the plan. Like, it's literally the same problem I had on the last earnings call, where it's all very vague, not enough detail, and it does worry me in terms of where are we sitting, because we could be on the brink of something absolutely brilliant, but then at the same time we could be miles away, and you wouldn't really know. And this parallel effect just got mentioned a few times, and it was also in the stockholder letter.
We're still getting guys cutting off and chopping this. This did happen to me and Chris on one stream, and we had to restart the whole stream again.
Let's do it.
Everyone's saying check the song, guys. Guys, we'll be back in 5. I don't know. Let's unpack Archer's earnings, and we'll go again. Ready?
Perfect.
Right.